forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger 10. Here's Steve Dace.
Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Bigger 10. I'm Steve Dace alongside my co-host, Aaron McIntyre. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good. We both have the short sleeves out. It's 75 degrees. It's March. It looks like we're going to get some postseason basketball. You know, it was that 8-9 game, Michigan-Rutgers. The second day of the Big Ten tournament. The teams are out there warming up. No fans in the stands. And just right before tip-off, the Big Ten tournament gets canceled. Shortly thereafter, the NCAA tournament gets canceled. And we wondered, would the world ever be the same again? But blessedly, we're back here a year later. And the day we're taping this, Big Ten tournament gets underway tonight with the two opening round games. And we are blessed to be able to break down, after what was an incredible season of Big Ten basketball, our Big Five on Bigger 10 focuses totally on what should be a memorable weekend of tournament basketball in Indianapolis. Aaron, you ready to go?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I am. I can't believe we're actually here. I was looking back last week because I remember we had done an episode previewing the Big Ten tournament that was good for about 3 hours, literally about 3 hours after we posted it, and it was all shot after that.
Well, get a hold of it. It's a collector's item now, right? Yes. Yeah. All right, let's begin. Let's start with a big picture question. Is this the best field ever?
No.
In the Big Ten tournament, going back to when it started in 1998. I want to take us to 2013. I've got some notes on that field. Big Ten teams heading into the postseason in 2013 were rated 3rd, 4th, 7th, 10th, 12th, and 20th at Ken Pom in his analytics. I mean, let me repeat that. 3rd, 4th, 7th, 10th, 12th, and 20th at Ken Pom. But right now, 6 of the top 11 teams. I mean, that's impressive, right? That's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 20 teams at Ken Pom heading into the postseason in 2013 were from the Big Ten. That's insane, right? Well, right now, 6 of the top 11 teams in Ken Pom are rated, are from the Big Ten. So, is this the best field ever, Aaron?
I don't think so. I really don't. You mentioned 2013. Last year doesn't really count. I think it's actually last year. In terms of, you just don't know any given night who you're going to lose to or who you could beat. I think last year really took the cake.
All right, so let's look at last year. Let's test that theory. The depth game I just mentioned, the 8-9 game last year, Rutgers and Michigan. Both were locks to get into the NCAA tournament. Yep. That was the 8-9 game last year. This year, it's Michigan State and Maryland, two teams that right now are on the right side of the bubble, but both are considered vulnerable heading into the postseason. So would you start there and say, right away, you can see that the depth last year maybe was better than what we're talking about this year?
Yes, definitely. And I would say even going down maybe a couple of notches as well, there was even better depth.
Is the top better this year, though?
See, what are you defining as the top?
Well, I know 3, 4, and 5 in the Ken Pom ratings are Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think in terms of can you reasonably not just catch lightning in a bottle? Can you reasonably throw out these teams against any other team in the country and expect to win? Yeah, I don't think you could do that last year, but this year definitely.
All right, let's talk about bubble teams. Trucker clock, who wants it? All right, who needs it? All right, because they're on the bubble. We talked about that 8-9 game between Maryland and Michigan State. Right now, they're both in the bracketology. Michigan State, in fact, has now gone. I got mocked last week in the bracketology we unveiled, or 2 weeks ago here on Bigger 10, when I projected that Michigan State would end up like a 9 seed because I thought they'd get a couple more wins down the stretch, including over Michigan. People said, you're nuts. Well, right now, they're one of the last 4 byes in the most recent bracketology. Maryland hovering around that last 4 in. They play each other Can either one of them afford a loss there? Who else do you feel is on the bubble right now?
I think both of them actually will make it in regardless of what happens. Regardless of what happens in that game, I think and I said this last week as well, just by virtue of being in this conference, if you're on the bubble, you're in. I think that's really as simple as it gets. Watch me eat my words here come Sunday. But I think if you're in the bubble or if you're on the bubble, you're in. In terms of other bubble teams in the Big Ten, I don't really see any others.
I don't either.
Unless, I don't know, unless maybe a Penn State can make it, but I think they're so far gone.
But Indiana's got some good wins.
Yeah.
If they win 3 games, they get to the finals. Are they on the bubble? And by the way, if you are a Hoosier fan, imagine this is the Hoosiers' year, right? The whole tournament is in Indiana, and you might not make it. That's just got to freaking crush you, right? But could they play their way without getting the automatic bid? Could they play their way into a bubble situation, or do you think they're too far gone?
I think they could. I mean, they swept the Hawkeyes. They swept Iowa. Like you said, they have some good wins on their resume. I think, again, it's just it might be a little bit too little, too late. Both Michigan State and Maryland down the stretch played fairly well, or at least a lot better than they did at the beginning. So I think that helps them a little bit more than it does Indiana. But, again, you win 3 days, 3 games in 3 days, that can't hurt you at all.
Let's talk about who's hot, who's not. Ohio State was the hottest team in the country a few weeks ago. They end the season on a 4-game losing streak. You look at Purdue, an amazing job Matt Painter has done with maybe the youngest team or one of the youngest teams in our league. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year for them. Here they are looking at a double bye. They come in playing good basketball. Michigan actually comes in, well, at least not as hot as they were. They ran into the buzzsaw against Illinois, who right now is probably the hottest team in the country. And then they had your classic, we already won the championship, kind of let down against Michigan State, who needed the game war and grinded it out. So we don't really know, has Michigan peaked, or did they just hit kind of a lull in their schedule? I guess maybe we'll find some of that out here this weekend in Indianapolis. But who else are you looking at in terms of who's playing well, who's not? Obviously, Minnesota has played Richard Pitino right into probably getting fired. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that list. I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot to add to that. I would say probably the team to watch. Well, 2 teams, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. So I'll go with the hot team right now. I think Illinois right now is on a mission. I really do. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're, like you said, they're the hottest team in the country. I think they probably are going to resent losing to Michigan, having beat them by, 20 points, 70, whatever.
And I'm here to tell you, as a Michigan fan, it wasn't that close.
Yeah.
They beat us by 20, and it wasn't that close.
And not winning the regular season conference title, I think they are going to be on a mission in this tournament. They're already a 1 seed, but they really want to go into the big dance. They want to go into that big dance with extra momentum.
John Beilein used to always say when he was at Michigan, when they had their surprising runs, it was the outlier player. You go back to 2013, and Mitch McGary came out of nowhere and suddenly started looking like a McDonald's All-American in that NCAA tournament. Remember that? He was just unfreaking believable, right? And you go to 2018, Muhammad Ali Rahman just absolutely came alive. Duncan Robinson. And when you look at outliers, Andre Curbelo for Illinois, a guy that has flashed at times, real good quickness and ability. But let's face it, you've got Ayo Dosunmu on your team. You ain't putting him on the bench too often, right? Unless you have to. Well, they had to for a few games. And Curbelo was just absolutely insane, like all Big Ten good. And the amount of confidence that has to give you if you're Illinois, and remember the last team they had that made a run to the Final Four in 2005, they had that 3-guard offense with D. Brown and those guys, and now they can go to that with Curbelo and Frazier and also with Ayo Dosunmu. So they have already identified their outlier player. I think that gives them a lot of confidence heading into March. All right, let's talk about chalk or Cinderella. What are you looking for this weekend? Only 4 times ever, here's a stat for you, only 4 times ever has a team seated lower than 3rd won the Big Ten tournament. Okay, so this goes back to 1998. And the first tournament was won by Michigan. We were the 3rd seed, but only 4 times has a team seeded lower than 3 won this event, right? Okay. And you know this is a Hawkeye fan because you've won it before, being seeded lower than 3rd. Here's the thing though, 2 of those times have happened in the last 3 years. It was actually Michigan both times. Michigan, the 8th seed in 2017, and then Michigan was the 5th seed in 2018. So this has been a chalk tournament in its history, but recently we have seen teams surprise. When I see a team like Ohio State seeded 5th, if you're looking at futures bets, hey, if you have DraftKings, we're able to get Illinois at plus 375, which had to be a mistake. You and I both did when we saw it right away. Yep. All right. But if you're looking for a team, I got Ohio State at plus 850 this morning. That is a team that was a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament 3 weeks ago, right? And when you look at the 4 games they lost, it wasn't like they got ran out of the gym in any of them, and it was a tough part of their schedule. So if are you looking for chalk in this tournament? You know, you could get a Michigan-Illinois finale, for example, or do you think we're going to see a Cinderella or 2?
I think by virtue of the top being so strong, I like we talked about a few minutes ago, I'm picking a lot of chalk in the last 3 days of the tournament. The only upset that I have, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, is tonight, happening tonight, and we'll talk about that later. But I think the top is so strong, I just don't see. I really don't see, and I don't know what the psyche of that Ohio State locker room
What's
is
Michigan's
right now.
psyche?
And that would be
Eli Brooks is banged up. They got a couple other guys banged up. They've already won the title.
Honestly,
do they really want to go balls to the wall this weekend? I mean, those are things. You're right. We especially when you're dealing with the young people. And here's the other thing too. At this age, Aaron, they could be thinking one thing right now, and then go out and win the first game, and they're like, "Hey, let's go ahead. We didn't care before, but now they won the first game. While we're here, let's go for it." I mean, things can flip on a dime, as you just mentioned with Ohio State. They went from number 1 seed to losing 4 in a row.
If I had to choose, and that last loss to Illinois was an absolute heartbreaker as well. Just lost that one down the stretch. If I had to pick right now, I think the Iowa-Illinois presumptive game is probably going to be the game of the tournament on Saturday. If that even happens, if Iowa can even get there, or if Illinois can get there as well, I think that's probably going to be, because to my mind, both of those teams are the only teams in this tournament with the ability to prove something and the will to prove something as well. Iowa, the preseason favorite. Illinois, the one feeling like they probably should have won the regular season crown as well. So I think that game is actually going to be the game of the tournament.
Well, let's get to it then. Without further ado, let's go to the picks. All right, so here's how I think the Big Ten tournament plays itself out. I like Northwestern to send Richard Pitino packing tonight. I think Penn State got a massive lift. By the way, Northwestern, weird. They started winning the first 3 Big Ten games, then didn't win a game for 2 months, and then they've won their last 3 again. I think Penn State got a big, I think, lift off that huge win on the road against Maryland in the finale. Remember, they have lost a lot of close games this year, and I just get the feeling maybe Nebraska's tapped out. So I like Penn State to potentially win actually big tonight, which sets us up. Are we going all the way through my bracket? Is that how we want to do it? All right. I've got Maryland beating Michigan State in the semifinals. I see Michigan State as a team that kind of shot the proverbial wad to get here and get itself in the tournament. And I think Maryland comes in hungry after the loss there to Penn State. Ohio State, I think, ends up defeating Northwestern. I like Rutgers to end the Archie Miller era once and for all. And I like Penn State to be a mini Cinderella and pull the upset over Wisconsin on Friday. If you know anything, or on Thursday. If you know anything about Big Ten basketball, there is always at least one upset, Thursday or Friday in the Big Ten tournament, which brings us to Friday in the quarterfinals. I think Michigan will get by Maryland with or without Eli Brooks. I think Ohio State beats Purdue, Illinois over Rutgers, and then I like Iowa to end Penn State's mini Cinderella run. And that would set us up for quite a semifinal Saturday. I mean, dude, if this was the Final Four, no one would complain, right? But I think Ohio State gets Michigan back. And I think Illinois ends up winning a barn burner against Iowa. And I have, as much as it pains me to say it, I got Illinois beating Ohio State in the finale, even though on value, I just thought Ohio State was too good of a team not to take plus 850 odds to win the Big Ten tournament. So that's how I project things playing out this weekend in Indianapolis. Aaron, what say you?
So first round, the only real upset I have is 14, I think, Nebraska over Penn State. I've got Minnesota over Northwestern as well, so I've got the exact opposite of your first two games. That brings us to the second round. I've got Maryland over Michigan State like you, Ohio State over Minnesota, Rutgers over Indiana like you as well, and I've got Wisconsin beating Nebraska. Quarterfinals, I've got Michigan over Maryland, Purdue and Ohio State. That could be, actually, I mentioned Iowa versus Illinois being the game of the tournament. I think Purdue, Ohio State could be a real.
Those guys played a great game in Columbus earlier this year that Purdue just stole, remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've got chalk Illinois over Rutgers, Iowa over Wisconsin. The 3-game sweep in the season for Iowa against Wisconsin. I don't know if that's ever happened before. And then in the semifinals, I've got Michigan over Purdue. Also should be a pretty good game. Illinois will get the 2-game sweep against Iowa this year, and then I've got Illinois over Michigan in the final.
Either one of those fields, as we've played them out, I mean, there's just too many good teams there. There are going to be a ton of good games, and I think either one of the semifinal Saturdays that we have in the Big Ten tournament, if that was the Final Four here in 3 weeks, I don't think anybody would complain. That's how good and strong this league has been this year. We'll come back, play our weekly game of Would You Rather next. And it's that time again. Let's play it. Would you rather here on Bigger Ten? And Aaron, we begin with you. Would you rather be hot going into March Madness or not? And I say this because I mean, you know, we won the title in '89 and we lost our last game at home to Illinois, the Flying Illini. They blew us right off the court at Chrysler. Head coach Bill Frieder got booed, then got crap canned 2 days later for taking another job, and then won the national championship. I mean, in 2018, we were the hottest team in the country and rode that all the way to the Final Four. So as a Michigan fan, I've seen us come in limping and do well and come in playing great and do poorly and vice versa. What do you think? What would you rather be?
I would much rather be hot going into March Madness, obviously, than not. I would say, since you brought up Michigan in the context of Michigan, I would be a little bit concerned right now what the psyche of that team is. It just depends, I would say, if they win a game, I think they'll win their first game on Friday for sure. But then after that, it just depends on how you lose. If you lose in the fashion that you lost to Illinois the first time, if you lose in the fashion, especially if you lose on Saturday, not in the championship game, if you lose in a back-breaking buzzsaw type fashion, then I would start to be really concerned. Because they've been, I don't think there's a dispute. I don't really care about Ken Palm or the polls. At this point, I think Michigan has been the best team in college basketball for the last at least 2 months. But then you start thinking, wow, we've lost 3 games down the stretch here, and if that last one in the Big Ten championship is or on Saturday in the semifinals, if that's a backbreaker, if that's a bad loss, I would start to worry that maybe those guys inside the locker room start to believe, oh crap, yeah, we are starting to lose this a little bit. So that's the only reason I would say go in hot. I would say, Michigan really, really needs to win the Big Ten tournament in order to just have the most advantage psychologically, I guess, going into the big dance. This next one for you. Would you rather play on the first or second day of the tournament? The big dance. The big dance.
Yeah. I want to play first. If I'm a coach, I was listening to Sirius XM on the way in this morning, and Rick Neuheisel, the old Colorado Washington coach, was hosting a show, and he said, "Man, if I were a coach right now, I'd be paranoid. We came all this way, we got through it, and hey, it's great that the testing numbers are great, cases are way down, hospitalizations are plummeting in America. I think like one state has like one ICU patient in the entire state or something. Okay, so that's all great, but he said the problem is when you're dealing with 18 to 23-year-olds and they've been cooped up like this for the last year, they start feeling like, hey, I can go see that girl. You know what I'm saying? And he goes, if I was a coach, I'd be militant right now, paranoid. We came all this way. You'll have all the freedom you want as soon as we lose, all right? But for now, don't be the guy that caused us to lose by taking your freedom too early. And that's why I'd rather play the very first day. I'd want to have as much structure as I could. The least amount of downtime as absolutely possible. So yeah, give me the first day.
All right, this next one's from you.
Would you rather be named Brad Davison or Russian collusion right now? What do you think? What name do you think has less mud attached to it? And can I just say, the coach and the players of Wisconsin, I get having your teammates back, okay? But not when he's freaking the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov all rolled into one. The guy who mastered the nut punch in Big Ten play. He's the dirtiest player maybe I've ever seen in our league. And the ridiculous gaslighting attempt they made after the Iowa game, I just thought it was beneath Wisconsin. But there's no question, man. His name is mud right now. So would you name your kid Brad Davison or Russian collusion first?
Would I name my kid? Oh, well, boy, that makes it even harder. I would rather be named Russian collusion because then I don't have a face to show. But
that's true.
As far as naming my kid, I think it's Russian collusion still.
Nice.
Final one is for you. Would you rather have a respectable but non-3, 4, 5 day in a row stay at your conference tournament or run the table and get in the NCAA tournament, winning your conference?
I think it depends. So are we talking about like
if you're already into the tournament? Yeah.
For Michigan, I don't want Michigan. Now, listen, it'd be great if they won the tournament. I don't want them playing on Sunday. They just finished 6 games in 12 days. You've got several guys. One of them carried off the court. 2 other guys that are limping around. I remember 2013. We just talked about that year. Michigan ended that season after being ranked number 1 in the country, 6-6 down the stretch. Lost badly to Wisconsin in the quarterfinals, and then ended up playing for the national championship. I think it depends. If I'm an Iowa fan, and we're a program that has not had a lot of postseason success recently, then I want to go all out this weekend. For me as a Michigan fan, I'm like totally fine if they just don't wet the bed on Friday, but then lose on Saturday and take a couple extra days off. I'd be totally fine with that.
Makes sense. That's it for Would You Rather.
All right, we'll come back with our Twitter poll results as well as our feedback of the week next. This week's Twitter poll results. We asked you who wins the Big Ten tournament. Illinois, whom both Aaron and I picked, overwhelmingly favorited by this audience, 62.3% of you picking the Illini. So, Aaron, let me ask the question to you differently now. Let's take Illinois off the board.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa, Michigan, or the field. What would you do?
I would take Iowa. Yeah, I would take Iowa. I think there's a better chance that on the Michigan side of the bracket, Michigan gets picked off. And if we're taking Illinois away, I think there's a better chance that Iowa makes it to the championship game. So I would pick Iowa.
If you take Illinois away, I'm probably going to take the field, actually, because I'm still getting 2 top 15 teams in there with Ohio State and Purdue. All right, this week's feedback of the week comes from Mike Kelly, who says Brad Davison will go on to have a great career in professional Russian basketball wrestling.
You ever seen this?
I have not seen this.
Oh,
no.
you didn't?
No, I had no idea this was a thing.
Yeah, that went viral this week. I don't know what the rules are.
Clearly, dribbling is not one of them.
But you could totally see Brad Davison. All of those guys look like Brad Davison.
Yes. If nothing else, Brad Davison. That does look like Brad Davison trying to fight through a screen. Minus the nut punch.
Right.
Yes. And it's a shame, too, because the young man is a good ball player.
He's good.
He's not a goon. I mean, he's got skills. He can shoot it. He can score the ball. So it's not like he needs to do this to get a scholarship, like in hockey, like the goons in hockey, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's just but we thought the same thing about who was the kid at Duke a couple of years ago that we're thinking
Grayson.
of. Yeah. I mean, that was a kid that was even more skilled than Davison, and he couldn't keep his hands to himself either. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Bigger Ten. Next week, we'll be back again. We'll break down the road to the Final Four for every team in the Big Ten that ends up making the tournament. A full bracket breakdown next week right here on Bigger Ten. Until then, follow us on Twitter at Bigger Ten. And don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, 5-star review, thumbs up, switch, share. I mean, all the various things that you can do, whether you watch us on YouTube or listen on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, etc. For Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Dace. We'll see you next week right here on Bigger Ten.